are self-starters. And we have this like mantra, like we can do anything, which I think is beautiful. It's why we're successful in what we do. But I think the question to ask is like, what is the cost of doing that? We're not just talking like a monetary cost. We're talking about like, I didn't start a business to be pulled into accounting and taxes. Like that's not why people start businesses. Like, so I can go learn that and do it myself. They start a not-for-profit or a business because there's something driving them. There's a vision, there's ambition, and that's what we want to capture.
Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here today with Shane Rowley. Shane, welcome to What the Fundraising.
Thank you, Mallory. It's an honor to be here with you.
I'm really excited for our conversation today. So I'm going to let Shane introduce himself in a second and give you a little background about him, but I need to give a little caveat to this conversation. So Shane is the CEO and founder, I believe, of Nimbl. They are my accounting and tax company, actually fairly recently, but I have had such an amazingly wonderful experience with them and was just in sort of a complicated situation recently where Shane himself ended up coming on the call with his team, spending an hour with me in a situation that I was really confused by. And I just felt so incredibly taken care of and seen. You were so patient with me. You were just such a good sort of teacher and partner. And I've just, honestly, I've been in business for a long time. I've run nonprofits for a long time. I don't know if I've ever been treated so well by a partner in that way, And so I was just so grateful. And I was like, I need you to come on the podcast because I need people to get to know you. I need people to get to know Nimbl because I think, especially in nonprofit work, it's so hard to find who are going to be those trusted partners who are going to really sort of understand where you're at and be with you in the process. So why don't you give a little background to you and sort of what brought you to creating Nimbl, and then we can go from there.
Well, you're making me blush, Mallory. Thank you for what you've shared. But yeah, I'm the co-founder and president of Nimbl. We are an outsourced accounting team for small businesses. So everybody from not-for-profits to other tech and SaaS companies as well. And really what our mission is to be with people like Mallory, people that are going through this part of starting a business or having different things go on in their business and helping them and be their financial partner. And so I love what Mallory shared, what she experienced is exactly what we desire for others to experience. And that's for them to feel like they have a partner, a financial partner in this relationship. Just like Mallory, I've been in that same situation before from an entrepreneurial side, been a CEO of other companies or a CFO of companies. And the biggest fear is what we don't know. And so really helping and understand what people don't know, what to look for, what to see, and what can't transpire if we do get the right information out in front of them.
That's such a good way of sort of putting it, because I think when it comes to a lot of people end up in the nonprofit sector, not from CFO background or finance background, right? But from caring deeply about a cause or an issue that got them involved, either starting their organization or working for an organization. And so, when I first went interim ED role, the financial piece was by far the biggest black box for me. And where I held a lot of fear and a lot of I don't even know what I don't know, sort of in terms of what's coming next. And I luckily had really great board members who helped walk me through that. But I feel like I also experienced a lot of providers who were kind of impatient with me around what I didn't know. And it led to avoidance, if I'm totally honest, around really, I think, deeply understanding some of my financials because I felt stupid or I felt like I just didn't get it. And I think what I appreciated so much about that moment with you and the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I think there are a lot of nonprofits in that scenario, and maybe they haven't sort of tackled the finance side of their organization or looked too closely at certain things because they haven't found the right partners or people to be able to do that with. And so I'm curious, from your experience working with nonprofits, when you first start to help them understand a little bit more about what's happening inside their organization, are there any patterns that you see in terms of like, okay, yeah, nonprofits, it's helpful to realize like kind of these three things perhaps as you're thinking about your finances, because you're noticing that most people when they come to you maybe haven't thought about those things yet?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Primarily, like, I think you nailed a little bit what we see in the not-for-profits world is like we see committed people, passion, mission oriented, looking to help others drive forward this mission. And then there's this like finance and compliance piece. And it's like, oh yeah, that part. And it's like, I don't want to deal with that. Sometimes do it, sometimes where the funds are tight. And so it's like, hey, we'll get a bookkeeper in, and that bookkeeper may turn over a few times and you never really get exactly what you're looking for. After a certain size, you start needing audits done or more complex tax filings. We've graduated from the postcard or the 990 easy to a full 990 with audits or different grants or different things going on. And it's like everything kind of gets a little bit more complex. And the board starts getting a little bit nervous, like, hey, do we have what we need? Accounting salaries are going up. And so everybody's worried about, can we get the right qualified people to do this and have them be mission oriented? And are they going to stay around for a long time? And so the biggest challenge that we typically see when we work with not-for-profits are they typically have had some level of treasurer that was a tokenized role given to someone with no finance or accounting background. To eventually, they hire some people to the lot of turnover happens. Systems and processes are very antiquated. And so they're 20 years behind where we are today in 2025. And so people just feel like lost, frankly. And it's like, hey, we have this vision and this mission we're driving towards. And like, I just need someone, a financial partner, someone that can like get this back on track. And so that's really what we look to do. Like, I've had my own experiences like in life where like a great example is like I remember having a bunch of teeth problems. Now, this sounds like a silly example, but it's me revealing a little bit. And like I was scared to death to go to the dentist because I was afraid of like what they were going to tell me and tell me everything's like a mess and needs all these changes. And I still remember that very first visit. I finally went in and this hygienist just like took me by the arm and was just like, we're going to take care of you. Like, doesn't matter. We're here for you. We're going to walk you through it. And just like gave me this comfort where like, I love going to the dentist now. Like everybody hates going to the dentist. Like I love it. Like they literally just showed me this experience that like there may be some pain. I may have a root canal and some things that are going to happen. But like, they're like, we're going to get you through it and we're going to be right here by your side. And I thought about Nimbl and I'm like, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to take these amazing board members and board of directors that have this amazing vision and not-for-profits and be with them in that and let them know that, hey, on the financial side, like, doesn't matter how messy it is, how messed up things are, or how complex it is, we're going to be with them through there. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question there, except around the top three big things that we should be looking at. But what I really do think it comes down to is like, in order to properly execute on our vision and mission that we have in these not-for-profits, we need to have comfort and just peace of mind that the compliance on the back end is appropriate.
Okay, I think that's really helpful. And as somebody who has also had dental things, I really resonate with that story. And so I'm curious, like the dentist is actually like a really good example because I feel like and tell me if I'm wrong or you've had a different experience, but I feel like when it comes to finance, I really hesitated to sort of go to a partner without feeling like I understood it all myself. Right? I'm like, I should know this. These books should be cleaner. Like this should be better. My data should be reconciled, right? Before I felt like I could sort of go to the right partner. But I think that was like a lot of limiting beliefs or assumptions I was making about kind of myself and my role. Whereas like, I would never go to a dentist being like, I know exactly how to take care of this sensitivity problem that I'm experiencing, right? I would go to them and I would be like, I'm having this problem. You tell me what I need to do. You are the expert. But I feel like in nonprofits, so much of our we wear every hat and we are self-taught in so many ways. And so we then build this belief that we should be able to do that for almost anything. And I did not know how to say like, actually, Mallory, this thing you just need to go to the dentist for. And so I'm curious, like for folks who are maybe at that moment where they are feeling really overwhelmed and they're like, okay, am I ready to find a financial partner like Nimbl or bring on somebody, in-house? What are some of the questions they should be sort of like asking themselves to make that determination?
Yeah. I mean, most of us, like, we are self-starters. We have this, like, mantra, like, we can do anything, which is, I think is beautiful. It's why we're successful in what we do. But I think the question to ask is, like, what is the cost of doing that? We're not just talking like a monetary cost. We're talking about, like, I didn't start a business to be pulled into accounting and taxes. Like, that's not why people start businesses. Like, so I can go learn that and do it myself. They start a not-for-profit or a business because there's something driving them. There's a vision, there's ambition, and that's what we want to capture. Like, we don't want them in the accounting and taxes. Like, there is such a cost that comes when they're stressed about notices from the IRS or from the state and not knowing what to do and having anxiety over it. And it's preventing from clothes going out to these third world countries or whatever the organization and vision is. It's a constraint. And so that's really what it comes down to me is like, what is the cost? We didn't start these businesses for accounting and taxes and all of these other things. It's about what we're actually doing.
Yeah, and I'll just give a personal story and then we'll move to something more positive. Yeah. But like before I started working with you all, I was working with this accountant and CPA who, was sort of like the least expensive version that I could find. And I was small business and it was all my own, savings and stuff going into it. And so I was like, okay, like my job, and this is also my nonprofit upbringing, right? And that scarcity mindset of like, find the least expensive way to do this thing, Mallory. Yeah. And so that was my orientation. And, okay, cool. That did not work out for a number of reasons. One of which, the moment I switched to you guys, your tax guy was like, hey, if you just do this one thing, you save $8,000 in taxes a year, like immediately, this tiny little thing. And that was like building on year over year over year over year. So I'm just sharing that because I think like that is one mindset thing I wish I would have corrected or like addressed about myself in a nonprofit role a lot easier. To your point around the cost, like, yes, the cost in terms of time and all those things, but also the cost in terms of like what that sort of like downstream financial cost is of making decisions at the start that are just focused on cost. And so I just want to sort of highlight that. But let's think about like the empowering side of the money too, because I think the other thing about having a great financial partner is that then the numbers and the like can start to become empowering, right? Like the cool thing about feeling like you have a partner who helps you really understand your numbers better is that you can start to story tell around them. And as a fundraiser, that can become really empowering and really helpful. And so can we talk about that? Like once you clean up the teeth, yeah. Like what does that then allow organizations to start to do?
Yeah, and it's a little bit different in the not-for-profit world, but not much different than even the technology side or startup world. But there's this point where it's like the numbers need to tell the story. And especially in the startup business world, like if you go and sell your vision and what you're about to go create or already created and what you're going to go do with money, at the end of the day, like there's going to be this due diligence period. And if your numbers don't tell the same story that the CEO just pitched, like there's going to be a disconnect, and it's a huge red flag that takes place. And so it's the same in the not-for-profit. When we go out and say, hey, here's our numbers, here's the impact we're having, here's what's actually going on. And they're like, oh, I love that. Like, love to see your financials and review those. And as a team, we'll look at this and look at what we can contribute. And if they don't see that same story that you're pitching, the fundraising is going to be really difficult. It just is. It's the authenticity, the validity, the integrity of everything you're doing is really at stake. And so our purpose is, even without the vision and mission of a founder sharing what they're doing, like the financials should tell the story. Like I always say that, like, hey, send me over financials, send me over a tax return, and we can read them like a book. Like we can tell you what's going on and see trends, see analysis, see impact. And then like to add in the heart of the founders or board of directors, like it just changes everything. It's what moves people to fundraise, in my opinion.
I mean, and I think it allows you to see like the forest sort of in a different way, right? Like we're on
Yeah.
the ground fulfilling on mission. And it's like, but there are certain things in the numbers where it's like, hey, this is costing you this year 3 times as much as it cost you last year. Like what's happening there? And I feel like some of those things that like when I in the weeds, we don't even notice, right? It's like I'm just out there buying farm supplies and I never noticed that how much that cost. And you sort of have to look at all the data of those numbers together to realize like, hey, something's going on here. And this is really impacting your mission delivery or your scale plan in this way. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing. When leading a not-for-profit, we have to be stewards of those funds. And part of being stewards of that funds is being accountable to those funds. And so having those proper budgets set up, all those functional expenses, having them broken up into the different categories, are we matching the budget, analyzing that as a board together, and really making sure we're righteous stewards for those funds. And that's just going to allow us to impact what more we can do, in my opinion.
Totally. And then we know it also allows us, I feel like, to make educated decisions around pivot, right? It's like we need to be nimble.
Haven't heard that one before, Mallory.
No, but truly, these are like change makers who our job is to is to address problems that haven't been solved before. If we knew exactly how to do that, we would have done it. So like if any entity needs to be able to iterate and make like data driven decisions on the fly, it is us. And so I feel like because like our hearts are so tied to our work, which is critical for doing the work that we do, we need other data inputs to help us see the big picture.
Yeah. And the data is, I think, one part of it too. I think adding a voice with it as well. I think some organizations, they have the data, but they don't know how to look at it. They don't know how to analyze it. They don't know how to see what questions they should be asking and what decisions they should be looking for, what solutions to be looking for. And so I think adding a partner, I always say like part of our favorite conversations is like, you're the expert in the operations. You know how to like deliver and achieve the mission that's being put out there. What we are is the financial information. And what happens is those have to come together. And when those come together, now we got like financial operation decisions, which really increase, from my opinion, like, and all the data, like increases the scalability of the potential of what we can do. From our side at Nimbl, we will never understand fully like the operations, like the way you do. Like it's just different. You're in it day in and day out. And we're in the financials day in and day out. And so we have to marry that information together and add a voice with it and reason and just a sounding board. And then everything can kind of just accelerate from there.
Okay, so for organizations who are listening to this who maybe already have an accountant or they've voluntold someone to be their accountant, but they're doing a really good job at it, what are a few questions that they should be asking about their financials to help them understand them better?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first, like, do they have financial statements? If they request a statement of financial position or their statement of activities or their statement of functional expenses, are those provided? Can they be provided timely? Are they being closed each month? Like, that's the first piece of the data. The best predictor of the future is the past. And so if we're not happy with like how things are moving in the past, well, they're just going to continue that way unless we disrupt it in some way. We have to create something different. And so getting that data is what I always say, like the historical piece. Let's focus on that first. Once you have the data, then let's look at the present day. Let's analyze the data. And that's kind of like phase 2. And then phase 3 is, what do we want the future to look like? And really start forecasting and building a vision and building budgets around what the future is. How are we going to fundraise? Where are these contributions and grants going to come from? And then from there, like, let the future dictate the present, because now that changes everything of how we approach the business or the not-for-profit from that point going forward. And so if we want to see change in the future, like, we have to understand the past, we got to respect it, we got to honor the present, and then we got to go create the future and bring it all together. And so if they do have an in-house accountant or they're doing it themselves or whatever that looks like, focus on those three principles and probably in that order. Sometimes as a board, we're like, hey, it's all about the future. And that's great. Like that's where our time and energy needs to be. But we got to respect that past a little bit, or else we may just be making problems or challenges, and we're just going to continue to repeat those for a while.
Okay, that is such good advice to leave people with. So what question have I not asked you in this conversation that I should be asking you?
That's a great question. Yeah, like I'm here with you. Like, and that's what we want to do is we want to be a partner and a leader, add value. Like we believe in giving first. What I would say is like what a lot of people think about in the cost, it's not affordable to like get expert advice. And it prevents them. They keep thinking, oh, I got to go find someone. I got to go find a neighbor. Or I got this girl. She knows books. And she's likes being a part of the mission. And so we'll ask her. And the reality is like sometimes we just create more messes and it actually takes more time. And so, like, what I would say is, like, I don't want this to be anything about Celsi. Like, it's me being with everybody. But the cost today with the technology is so much more affordable than it's ever been. And so to outsource and have actually experts doing what they do best and freeing people up to do what they do best in the operation side and the fundraising side and fulfilling on the mission, that's like, it's so affordable now. Like we always say, like we're pretty shocked if anybody can do it in-house for cheaper than our services, just because of what we can do on the back end with technology and adding the accuracy, the reliability. As organizations get bigger, like it's just needed. You know, there's audits requirements. Different states have different requirements when you get to certain sizes with number of assets or revenue. And so just recognizing like it's probably more affordable than most people think. Like I'm happy. Like I love talking to not-for-profits. Like it's a passion of mine. It's something I'm passionate about. And so I'd love to be in this conversation with anyone that's wondering or looking for an opportunity to make a change, or if they've had turnover, that's usually one of our most common ones, is sometimes it's really hard to keep that accountant and that not-for-profit. And it's unfortunate, but it's like, hey, let's add stability. Let's get that first. Let's have finances be the stability part of it. So when you're in the board of director meetings, it's not like, okay, we got to find someone to do the financials again and someone do the audit again. Like, let's have that just be a stagnant piece that's in budget, aligned, and now let's actually focus on the stuff that really matters and why we're all here today.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that is a really good reminder for folks at the end, because I think that a lot of people, maybe they investigated working with a firm or something 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and technology has changed so fast in so many different ways. And so your point around the cost adjustment, I think is really valuable, especially as other costs are on the rise. I think we're all looking for the things that cost less than they did years ago. So I appreciate that reminder. So for folks who do want to connect with you, where should they go to do that? And then of course, I'll have the link to Nimbl in here as well.
Yeah, our website's a great place, www.trustnimbl.com. Believe firmly on that trust side of things. You trust us, and we grant trust to you as well in honoring that. And then LinkedIn as well, Shane Rowley. I'm pretty active there as well. So either of those would work great. Please reach out and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Mallory.